ABC News coverage of the 84 vote continues.
Shortly after 8 in the East, we brought you our projected returns from 22 states where the polls are closed. There are 4 states where the polls are closed that we are unable to call as yet because the results are too close. They are Michigan, Pennsylvania, Maryland, and Massachusetts. We'll have them sooner or later. Peter?
David, just to get away from the numbers for a second and talk a little bit about the personalities in the campaign. Maxine Isaacs, who is Walter Mondale's press secretary, tells us what he has been doing this evening. He has, among other things, been preparing a statement for his supporters, but has also been over to see his father-in-law in the hospital, who fell the other day and broke his legs. And then I guess this is not at all unexpected. Edward Rawlins, who is the president's campaign manager, was asked a short while ago whether or not he thought the president was going to sweep 50 states. He said not yet, but it is close, which leads us to James Baker, who is the White House Chief of Staff and who joins us this evening from a hotel room. It looks like it can only be a hotel room in Los Angeles, quite close to, of course, where the president is watching electoral return. Mr. Baker, are you like to make the same predictions that Mr. Rawlins is making, that the president may take 50 states?
Well, I wouldn't differ with that prediction, Peter, as long as you say might, because it looks like the projections that you've got there are very, very encouraging in that direction. I do think that it looks like the president will get a very, very significant proportion of the popular vote tonight, and should take clearly the majority of the states.
I want to ask you a slightly philosophical question. I want to know whether you think at the end of this campaign people have understood the issues, or do they really just understand the slogans?
No, you know, I think people do understand the issues. I've read a lot, as I'm sure you have, that the campaign's all fluff and pretty pictures and balloon drops and that sort of thing. But I tend to disagree with that. And I think one reason that the president has been so strong throughout this election is because the American people appreciate the record of the first 4 years. And we've had 2 records here in this campaign to contrast, and we hope and believe that we've contrasted those records effectively.
Are you going to stay in the White House after the election?
Well, I've said I'm going to do what the president wants me to, David, and I have every indication that...
Jim, hold on. You will want to hear this. We now project the winner in Michigan to be Mr. Reagan, which gives him the electoral votes to make him president for a second term. It gives him a total of 274. Now, you don't always get news that good when you get on the television.
No, you're absolutely right, and that is superb news, and we haven't even gotten to the West yet, have we?
All right, no, 270 votes, and that's that makes Mr. Reagan. Jim, thank you. Thanks very much for being with us. I can't always give you news.
I'd like to hold him around for a second, if I may. Let me just make a couple of points here. Both candidates, do you mind standing by for 1 minute, Mr. Baker?
Not a bit.
Both candidates, by the way, have agreed that they are not going to concede and they are not going to claim victory until all the polls are closed, and that includes in California, which will be 11 o'clock, just under 2 hours from now, Eastern Standard Time, at least we're operating on in these clocks. And we're going to remind you again that even though we projected the president has enough electoral votes to be re-elected, there are very important races all around the country. Let me come back, having said that, to you, Mr. Baker, and ask you a self-interest question. The president gave his last news conference to the press in July. If all these projections are correct, and we believe they are, Mr. Reagan is re-elected, is he going to be more accessible to the press in the second term?
Well, I think he's going to be as accessible as he's been in the first, and I really can't accept the premise of your question, Peter, because after all, this is the first incumbent president in history, I suppose, with a 20-point lead in the polls, who's ever agreed to debate his opponent in the context of a general election campaign. In addition to that, while he hadn't held as many formal evening press conferences, perhaps, as some others, if you add up all the times that he's spent in interviews and with the press, they come to a significant amount of time. I'm not so sure it's the number of evening press conferences that ought to be counted. After all, Jimmy Carter in 1980, when he ran for this office, only held 6 press conferences, and President Reagan's held 5 already this year. So,
all right, one question, if I may, about policy. And again, we base it on our projections. The polls have not all yet closed. What would you like the president to take as his absolute first priority in a second term?
Well, it's not a question of what I would like for him